meeting. Have you? Have you ever found yourself in a meeting? Have you been in a meeting where you have found that people were trying to hijack your authority as a leader? Has it ever happened to you? I know how incredibly frustrating this can be, and in this video, we are going to talk about a couple of aspects as it relates to this topic. One, I want to share with you why this could be happening, or when I would say rather, when you may find yourself in a situation where someone is trying to hijack your authority. I'm also going to share with you a few reasons as to why hijacking of authority can happen and what you want to start thinking about in terms of not allowing this to continue for you. This topic is definitely more of an advanced topic. And if you are a woman in leadership and this particular topic has resonated with you and you know you've been in situations where someone has tried to hijack your authority, undermine your authority, or whatever the case may be, I have a very, very special offer for you. It is a high stakes communication intensive. Tomorrow, April 23rd, is the last day my 6-year business promotion will be available. This intensive will change your life. Many C-suite executives and senior VPs and etc. and business owners have not been able to receive that level of in-depth surgical precision in terms of how they communicate and how to help them communicate more confidently and concisely under pressure. We go through drills. There's just a lot of things that I do to help you prepare. So when you have those challenging situations come up, you are ready to respond very quickly. So take a look at my website, exciteexcellence.org, and you'll learn a bit more about that. You're also welcome to contact me for a strategy session if you need some support. As I mentioned, tomorrow is the end of my business 6-year anniversary. So I want you to be able to get the support you need while the promotion is there. Now let's go into this specifically. First, my channel is more heavily focused on advanced communication skills and strategies. If you are a woman in leadership, a man in leadership, or someone thinking about leadership, you're going to gain a tremendous amount of value on this channel. When it comes to having your authority hijacked, so to speak, there's a couple situations that will occur when your authority will be hijacked. There's really two. One is specifically when you are in a group setting publicly. That's number one. Your authority can be hijacked in that setting. Number two, you may be at a place where people are doing this behind closed doors or behind your back. Your authority may be being hijacked in those conversations. So we're going to talk a bit more about that. But before I do that, hello and welcome to those of you watching the live today. If you have ever felt like someone was trying to undermine you or hijack your authority as a leader, this is the best place for you to be at on YouTube today. Let me know what part of the big, beautiful world you all are joining from today and what questions you have about this situation in terms of having your authority hijacked as a leader. I want to say hello to Jaden West. Welcome back, Jaden. How you doing today? Jaden says, hey, I remember you. Welcome. Good to see you again, Jaden. Jaden West is from Puyallup. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Washington. Welcome, friend. Hope you're doing well today. Let me know where you all are joining from today and what questions you have specifically around this topic. Have you ever been in this situation where you felt like your leadership was being undermined or someone was hijacking your authority? Put it in the comments below. Let's talk about it. For those of you just joined, I just mentioned to you there's really two scenarios where your leadership or your authority will be hijacked as a leader. It will either happen publicly in front of a lot of people or it will happen privately behind closed doors. So let me know which one you have experienced, and I will tell you I've experienced both. But let me know which one you have experienced, and I'm going to share with you how you can stop having the hijacking of your authority to take place. There's a couple strategies you want to keep in mind. But before I do that, let me go into the chat. Jaden says, no, you aren't saying it right. It's pay all up. Pay all up. Okay. Pay all up. Okay. Well, thank you. Well, thank you for clarifying that, Jaden. So at least I know how to pronounce it. All right. There's a couple, we talked about the situations as to when your authority may be hijacked. Privately, publicly. It's really one of the two. How you respond really does make a big difference. Now, before I go into the things that you need to do to stop having your authority hijacked, let me share with you an insight. There's a lot of videos. I have over 1,000 videos, which is a milestone that many content creators do not reach on YouTube. But I have 1,000 videos of high stakes, high pressure conversations to help you be able to communicate in that way. If you're experiencing this situation specifically, you want to take a look at my videos that talk about thinking on your feet, managing your emotions under pressure, maintaining eye contact, listen for my cowboy analogy, your tone of voice, your body language, your facial expressions, and silence. All of these videos I just mentioned to you, they are on my live tab. If you are in that situation where you are struggling with this specifically, you absolutely want to take a look at my live tab and just spend some time there and learn what you can to develop that very solid foundation that you need to be able to communicate more confidently and concisely under pressure. Before I go into what you need to do to stop having your authority being hijacked, let me go into the chat. Okay, Jaden says, like you, the tribe. Okay, thank you. We have Ed Matando Nacimiento Beauty says, my friend here now with my wife. Well, hello, welcome. Hope you're doing well today. Let me know if you ever had this situation happen to you where you felt like you were being undermined or your authority was being hijacked. Has it happened to you? Put in the comments below. Let's talk about it. Now, there's a couple things that you can do to prevent this from happening. There's a bit of work that you have to do to get this going for you. Now, one of the first things that happen when someone tries to specifically hijack your authority, meaning they're undermining you or they are talking behind your back or doing something like that, one of the reasons why it may be a knowledge problem. There may be some form of a knowledge problem going on. So let me go into specifics. What does it mean in terms of a knowledge problem? There may be legitimately something that you are saying, something that you are doing that is making the room or other people think that you do not know what you are doing. Now, why do I say it's a knowledge problem? You may not know what's going on. And if you don't, do what you can to find out information about it specifically. And if you're able to do that, it will help you out tremendously. Because if people sense that there's a knowledge problem, just for one moment that you don't know what you're talking about and you have no idea what's going on, they will automatically try to hijack your authority in a meeting, whether it is publicly in front of a group of people or privately, as I mentioned, behind closed doors. People will do it. So you want to make sure you do not have a knowledge problem at all. Now, how can you overcome this? We can't know everything that's going on in the world or in your discipline, but you do want to at least prepare for whatever meeting, project, initiative that you're working on. If you take a few moments to prepare in advance, that will allow you to at least have the knowledge base that you need so that knowledge in terms of what you know does not appear as if it's something that you do not know. That's the first reason why you want to make sure you adopt this, because people will hijack your authority. They will undermine your authority if they feel like you don't know what you are doing. Now, I do also want to say this as well. There are sometimes people will undermine your authority or hijack your authority for no good reason whatsoever, just because it can. So you have to keep that in mind. That happens, but sometimes people will do it if there's a knowledge problem. So you want to make sure you're not in that category. I'm going to go into the second reason, or second strategy, I would say rather, that can help you to prevent your authority from being hijacked or undermined. But let me go into the chat first. Okay, so Jaden says, oh, I got to see you. Okay, we have Baksumanatri. I hope I said that correct. Hope you're doing well today. Cat 23rd says, hello, dark, heart. Sorry. Good to see you, Cat. Hope you're doing well today. Okay, so we talked about situations where your authority will be undermined, and I also shared with you specifically as to what is one reason why your authority may be hijacked. The second reason why your authority may be hijacked is the fact that there could be a communication problem. How many of you have ever been in a meeting where you've heard someone speak about something, and when you listen to them, they sound completely unsure of themselves? Like they have no idea what's going on. It's not a knowledge problem. They know what's going on, but maybe they're not communicating in a way that sounds very confident. I've heard that. Have you ever heard someone sound like they're not confident? This is a problem. And if people feel as if you are not confident in the information you are sharing with other people, they will automatically try to do what? Hijack your authority or undermine you because you're not communicating confidence. Now, I talk about communication on this channel all day, majority of the day. And how you communicate in those very high stakes, high pressure situations will either help you to propel yourself forward in your career, in your business, or etc., or it will hold you back. And I do want to say this. A lot of people think they communicate well. They do. I had a conversation with someone previously, and we did an assessment, and they said, well, I think I communicate well. But after the high stakes communication assessment, they said, maybe I don't communicate well. It can help you or it can hurt you. And the question you have to ask yourself is, how much longer or how much money are you willing to leave on the table? Are you willing to waste by not addressing your communication at that next level? Sometimes the cost of you waiting to work on how you communicate, to sharpen your communication skills, to be able to manage your emotions and respond quickly when you're in those very high stakes, high pressure situations, it may not be worth it. It may cost you a lot more than it would cost you to invest in yourself. So keep that in mind. You may have a communication problem. And if you have a communication problem, when people sense that, they will feel as if you're not confident in what you're trying to say, and they will say, okay, this person is not confident, or they're not communicating their confidence. I'm going to undermine their authority, and I'm going to hijack their authority. Now, before I go into my third reason and strategy for you to stop having your authority hijacked as a leader, whether you are a woman in leadership, this is even more critical for you to work on, especially depending on the role that you're in. You may be the first woman, you may be the only one in the room, you may be one of a few, and you really want to set yourself up for success, which is why you want to reach out to me for some support at exciteexcellence.org to get you where you need to be. Okay, Kat says, being systemically excluded from early stage conversations where scope and constraints get set, leaving you to execute decisions already made in practice. That's a really great point. And Kat, I appreciate you mentioning that so much because this can happen quite a bit. And I will tell you that this is one of the more challenging situations to be in, Kat. And let me explain to you why. I've been in those situations, and actually one of those situations is one of the reasons why I had to leave a position because of that. And what happens oftentimes that people don't really think about is that, sorry, my light just went out for a moment. Anyways, what happens oftentimes in those situations, specifically, I'm sorry about that. My light just went very, very bright there. Okay, now, I apologize. What happens specifically in those situations is that you are basically put in a scenario where, as Kat mentioned, those decisions have been made with you, not with you, but really not with you being there. So give me just 1 second because my light it went to the wrong setting. Okay, sorry about that. Now, when you're in those situations, your authority is going to be hijacked because people have already made those decisions, as Kat said, about you and what you're doing and how you're going to do it and etc. And it can make it very difficult for you to accomplish whatever role, whatever task it is that you're trying to do because of that reason, because you are constrained. You can only do but so much because someone has already made decisions for you, and it makes it really, really hard for you to execute those decisions. So thank you so much, Kat. I appreciate you bringing that up. Kat says, oops, and smiley face. Yes, I kicked it by accident, so I apologize for that. Now, my third reason, or third strategy, I would say rather, to stop your authority from being hijacked is, actually, I'm going to give you one more after this, is to be consistent. Consistency is very, very, very important. If you are consistent in the way that you communicate to other people, how you project yourself in terms of your confidence, then people know what to expect from you. If you happen to be in a situation where the pressure is high, the stakes are just as high, and you find yourself needing to get support, if you have been pretty consistent with how you have communicated with people, building your relationships, not being that person that is highly emotional for no reason whatsoever, then people will tend to support you whenever the pressure is on. They will advocate for you and say, oh, by the way, I know that this person's been working on this, or this person's been working on that, and etc. So you being consistent is very important, because if you're not consistent, then people will think that, oh, okay, I noticed that this person is having a rough day today, and I'm just going to go ahead and hijack their authority because they look like they're off today. But if you portray yourself as being consistent, I know oftentimes, of course, we're humans, and there's things that happen that may make us very happy or make us very, very frustrated. But just keep in mind that how you present yourself every single day, it really does matter. How you communicate every single day, it really does matter. And if you've ever found yourself in a situation where your authority has been hijacked, or people are undermining you, outside of the fact that people can be just simply mean, and they just do that because they want to. But if you've ever been in those situations, I am telling you that some of the issues that I mentioned earlier probably have a factor into why people feel like they can do that to you. Now, for those of you just joining, welcome, welcome. We just shared a few ways that you can stop having your authority hijacked as a woman in leadership or as a man in leadership. And I will share with you all that just joined at least the three, and then I'm going to go into the fourth and final one in a moment. But before I do that, how many of you have ever been in a situation where you have felt as if your authority was being hijacked, or you felt like you were being undermined? Let me know in the comments below. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. As many of you know, I'm here to build, and I've mentioned this on all of my platforms. This is my 6th year of business as of yesterday. I'm here to build the largest high stakes, high pressure content library for leaders on planet Earth. And the way that I'm able to do that is collectively by us working together and having conversations here live, so that when people are looking for information, they see our dialogue, they hear what happened, what is everybody else experiencing, because I know that's something that I personally want to do to help people. Even if we are not in the same country, we're in different parts of the world, being able to communicate confidently and concisely under pressure is something that you automatically want to have if you really want to stand out as a leader. Don't be the person that freezes. Don't be the person that can't think on your feet. Don't be the person that can't receive a promotion because you're not able to respond appropriately. I don't want that for you. If you follow my channel or subscribe to my channel or work with me directly as a client of mine, whether you are a working individual or you are a business working with me, I guarantee you these skills that you have, it is not just for your professional day-to-day, it's for all aspects of your life, but I'm very heavily focused on how to communicate in those challenging situations when they happen. All right, so Kat says I have. So Kat has been through that situation. I have too. And we have I want to say a Swin 50. I hope I said it correctly. Says, yes, I'm ready. Well, welcome. Glad you're here today. Now, going into my fourth and final reason why people sometimes will struggle with this. And let me make sure I went through all the three. So you may have to go to retract. Ways for you to stop having your authority hijacked or undermined. You may, number one, have you may have some problems. Okay, so the very first problem that you may have this problem, you may have a knowledge problem. Okay, you may have a knowledge problem. If you want me to go into more detail, then let me know or take a look at the replay. So you may have a knowledge problem. You may have a communication problem. You may have a consistency problem. And finally, you may have a problem with your executive presence. So I'm going to talk a bit more about executive presence in just a moment before I go into the chat. But having an executive presence really does protect you to prevent your authority from being hijacked or undermined. If someone attempts to do that, if you have set your executive presence up correctly and properly, then people tend to think twice about undermining you, hijacking your authority. They know that I may not want to do that. On the contrary, if you do not have a executive presence set up, people will more than likely feel a bit more comfortable saying, I can get by with this with her. I can get by with this on him. And they will try to just test, okay? They will try to test you and test you again to see how far can they go. But if you set your executive presence up, this will not be an issue for you so much. Cat 23 says, my decisions were getting pre-socialized in meetings I wasn't invited to. That's a really great point, Kat, and I appreciate you so much for sharing that. I actually had a conversation with someone about a month ago that had something very similar happen to them compared to what Kat mentioned. They were in a situation where they felt as if some of their meetings that they were having, that people were pretty much pre-socializing, right? They were pre-socializing and they were developing their own perspective in terms of what this person was working on specifically in their projects, which was not actually reality. But the problem that happened specifically for this individual was that they were very hesitant to say anything because they felt as if they didn't want to say anything. They were a bit nervous. Thank you for the heart emojis. They were a bit timid. And they just said, well, okay, I mean, that's not really what I'm doing, but I'm just going to let them just say it and I'll deal with it later. This is the reason why you want to work with me, especially on a high stakes communication intensive for sure. Because if you're in that room and people are pre-socializing about you, as Kat mentioned, ahead of time in meetings that you weren't invited to, then how do you respond to that? How do you correct that when you find out the issue is actually taking place? Sometimes we can talk about it all day here on the channel, and I can tell you, say something, say something, say something. But when it is that time and it's that moment where you need to say something, a lot of times what happens to us as leaders, sometimes as women in leadership as well, we tend to do what? Stay quiet. We tend to stay very, 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 very quiet. We don't say anything. And we just watch and say, well, that's not really right. Or we talk about it outside the fact. Don't be the person to do this. Okay? Don't be the person that decides you want to stay quiet. If there's an issue, you need to say something about it sooner rather than later. But sometimes knowing what to say and how to say it, that is the reason that people tend to struggle. Sometimes it's not that they don't want to say anything. They just don't know how to say it. Has it ever happened to you before? It's happened to me before also. So you don't want to be that person. But if we work together, then you will start to develop your own decision-making algorithm, I say, in terms of when do I need to say something? What do I need to say? How do I need to say it? Is this a friendly person? Is this not a friendly person? Some of those things I will mention in my free ebook that's coming out very soon. Okay, Kat says, you become a procedural checkpoint rather than a value-adding node. That's a great insight, Kat, and I appreciate that so much because I know you've been in that situation based on what you're telling me. I've been in that situation, and it's not good. It is not a good situation to be in, and you do feel like it's just a procedural, just check off. Okay, we talked to Kat today. Yep, we did. We talked to Kat today. And Kat's going to be doing this. Yep, Kat's going to be doing this. But you have a lot more value to add. And when you're in those type of situations, oftentimes you have to really think about the role that you are in specifically. Because sometimes what happens when those instances occur, I tell my clients this all the time, especially when we're in our executive strategy sessions. I tell them all the time, is there something that you have noticed that is causing you to be a bit more hesitant about moving forward with this role or staying at this organization or etc.? And oftentimes what will happen is that there have been red flags all along that you may have seen and decided to disregard or put them in the back of your mind or say, I don't want to worry about that. I know that happened. I saw it, but maybe they're having a bad day. A lot of times there's often flags. It's just like any other situation, any other relationship. Sometimes there's flags where you're thinking, this isn't quite right and I don't really like this. What can I do to change it, or do I need to change direction? And a lot of times we are so caught up in the day to day. Many of us have responsibilities, we have families, we have bills, we have things we have to take care of, and we simply just don't take that time to pause and say, wait a minute, this does not feel right to me. I don't think I like the way that this is going. Am I going to continue to stay here, or am I going to try to look for something else? It's something to really keep in mind. Many people don't take that time to pause. That's the reason why, if you have never worked with an executive coach before in the past, this is the reason why working with an executive coach helps you to literally just skyrocket your career. The secret to it is that I tell my clients this all the time. It is like a spa day. It is 100% focused on you and what you are dealing with and your challenges, customized to you. There's only but so much I can do on YouTube specifically because we're in a group setting. But that's how executive coaching is so powerful, is that we are trained to help you figure out what do you know, what are you struggling with, and how can you move forward faster. All right, I want to say hello to David XMLG. Hello, David. Welcome back, friend. How are you doing today? David says, hi, how are you? I'm doing fantastic, David. Hope you're doing well. Also, and good to see you again. Kat says, some days I felt like not showing up because whatever effort I put in, it was never acknowledged or seen. Kat, that is, I'm sorry, one, that you dealt with something like that. Number two, what you mentioned, Kat, is so incredibly common. As leaders, we feel this all of the time. And you do become tired and you do become burnt out because you're working and you feel like you're not being acknowledged or you're not being seen. Everybody is different in terms of how they communicate and the way they want to be communicated, etc. Sometimes people need that constant acknowledgement to know this is how I'm doing really well, I'm doing great, and I appreciate that. And if you happen to be that type of person, then you want to make sure when you're communicating to people, this is how it would be helpful to get insight there. And I do think it's worth celebrating your teams, the successes, the areas that they're improving upon, etc. And just as Kat mentioned, this is something that you have to keep in mind. When people are putting a lot of effort in, just acknowledge them and say, great job, you're doing great. I appreciate your value. I appreciate your time, or something along those lines, to make them feel seen and heard and acknowledged. I will say, as you grow, and when you start to become into those type of roles that perhaps are a bit more challenging or a bit more difficult to deal with, and etc., as you develop, your need for wanting to get that acknowledgement, it starts to go down. And let me explain to you why. You become you become a person that is able to get results and able to get things accomplished. And what happens as you start to deal with those big massive fires, and you're putting out fires, you start to build up your confidence. And I'm sharing with you a secret that really does happen to people as they elevate in leadership. Most leaders that are C-suite, senior VPs, business owners, I'm telling you secrets that they probably wouldn't share. But what happens as you start to develop yourself and you get into those roles and etc., you reach a level of confidence where your confidence is sincerely, honestly, is way up here. And it not only helps you to know that you're doing the right thing, but it also helps you to be able to manage those situations where perhaps you're not getting that feedback that you would like to have. You're not getting, oh, you're doing great or you're doing fantastic. But even though you're not receiving it, you don't really care. And you really don't care about it. Not that you are nonchalant and just don't care about the role, but it gets to a point where there's something bigger that's happening within you. There's a huge transformation that's happening. There's a change happening where you don't feel like you don't need that as much. And that only comes with time, and it comes with experience, and it comes with being in those more senior level advanced type roles. Most of the people that are in those senior level roles, I would say, I'm not going to say all, because I know some CEOs that have not advanced to that level yet, but I do know quite a bit of them that are just, they don't necessarily need that acknowledgement, and that's only because they've just been in those very hard situations where they know what they're doing is worth value, whether someone tries to validate it or not. Now, I share this with you because even though this is something that happens with experience, this is something that you just don't wake up with and say, oh, by the way, I don't need to hear anybody tell me I'm doing a good job. It's not, but it is something that you do start to develop as you are evolving as a leader, and especially when you are elevating to that next level in your career. Okay, Kat says, well, for me, it was heavy because it was intentional negligence. And I will tell you that too, Kat, when people do things like that intentionally, they're doing it on purpose. And these are the type of people, or the type of, and thank you for the heart emojis, these are the kind of environments that you do not want to work in. Because this is essentially, to me, when you're in those type of settings, it reminds me of, let's say, the Industrial Revolution when they first started. Now, you all have heard me talk about this a couple of times on the channel, but when the Industrial Revolution started, people were working and working. They were working days and nights and days and nights and days and nights again. And they were being paid low wages. They weren't being acknowledged for any of the work that they're doing. And that's when they started developing, obviously, labor laws and etc. here in the United States. Now, specifically, in your case, Kat, if you have people that do that, even though we have labor laws and all that, we still have people out there that still will just let you work and just not give you any type of acknowledgement whatsoever. And as an employee, it becomes very heavy, as Kat mentioned. It's hard because you're working, you're doing all these things, and people are saying, oh, did you finish doing this? Did you finish doing that? And you're thinking, wait a minute, I just did all of this work and you don't see any of this that I did? Why is that? And that's where that intentional negligence comes into play. Even though we have labor laws, there are still many of managers or supervisors or directors or C-suite executives that do exactly what Kat said. They will allow you to contribute, but then they do not acknowledge you, and they do it on purpose out of negligence. And Kat, as you mentioned earlier, when the situation happened, you felt as if you were what? A checkpoint. Just a checkpoint that, okay, we talked to Kat, Kat's gonna be working on that. And when you're in those type of settings where the actual engagement of your employment feels very transactional, that's when you have to really think about, am I at the right place? And sometimes that can be a very, very hard place to be, especially if you're in the middle of transitioning roles, transitioning jobs. You may not feel as if you want to make that move just yet. And if you're not in the position to do that, that's okay. You just have to develop a plan in terms of where do you see yourself and be actively working on that every day. Whether that's developing another skill set that will help you go into another position that will help you to gain more income, or perhaps looking at job opportunities or starting your own business. There's many ways to address that, but sometimes, Kat, there are a lot of managers that will do exactly as you said, and it is intentional. They will intentionally neglect you and let you keep working and doing whatever it is you need to do and not acknowledging you, which is something that it can make it very difficult for you to want to continue working in an organization that treats you like that, because it happens. And I know many people that are probably in HR, in C suites, or business owners, or etc., will say, why would you tell people that? Because it's the truth. And this is something I have actually seen people do countless times again. And so there's people out there that are like that. You just have to determine, do you really, is it worth your time to stay here? Okay, Kat says, it was not easy to leave the place because I needed money to pay tuition. So I had to put up with the unfair behaviors, but now I'm good and got the funds. Well, congratulations, Kat. I'm happy for you. And it's hard. It is so hard when you're in that situation, especially when you're trying to pay for your tuition. So I really just commend you for going through that and sticking with it until you were able to leave and you decided that you wanted to make that change. I know how it is working a job and being, thank you for the heart emojis and the high five, Cat. I appreciate that. I know how it is when you are working a job and you're trying to go to school and do all that, and you have to make a decision to leave. That happened to me when I ended up transitioning to New Orleans to work in a forensics DNA lab. That exact type of situation happened to me. Very, very similar to yours, Kat. And I was in a situation where I was working previously in a DNA sequencing lab. I moved to New Orleans to work in a forensics DNA sequencing lab because, as many of you know, being a dentist and being a doctor wasn't just on my to-do list. It just wasn't something I was even interested in doing. I planned on working for the FBI and being a forensic DNA analyst. That's all I ever dreamed about for like decades of my life. And so what happened in this case, I was in a very similar situation to you, Kat. It was very, very transactional in terms of the role that I was in, and I decided to go to school. And when I let my employer at that time know, by the way, I'm going to be attending a graduate program here specifically, one of the owner of the company said, "Oh, that's great, congratulations." My supervisor, on the other hand, said, "That's unacceptable. We didn't hire you here to go to school." And I was devastated. I was crushed because I'd already applied for some graduate programs, and this just so happened to be the one graduate program that was not within forensics that I actually was accepted to, which everything happens for a reason. I believe God has a plan for everything. And I had to make a decision. I was accepted into graduate school. Am I going to stay in graduate school, or am I going to quit and just work at this job? And I decided to not quit. I decided to work at the job, but I attended school on my days off. So the good thing was I was working a Tuesday through Saturday schedule at the time. Mondays I was off. I was able to take all my major classes on Mondays, and a couple days out the week I had to take biostatistics in the evening, so I had to leave work at a certain time. So I basically did the juggle of both. Now, I didn't want to do that, Kat. I did not want to work both jobs, work full-time student and full-time employee. It was very difficult, and I'm sure you understand how incredibly hard it is to do that. I didn't really want to do it, and so I had to do similar to what you did. I had to really hang in there. I had to hang in there until I got things financially in order. I was a young adult at the time with only the support of me, myself, and I had to really buy myself time and wait. But the change that happened for me is that I was able to get funding from college, but it came a point in time where there was a new project that they were taking on board, and it was going to have to require my schedule to be changed to Monday through Friday based on the client. And that's when I had to say, you know what, I have to leave, I have to resign. And I quit, and then the rest is history. That's why I'm here with you today, because I made that decision. So it can be very difficult to make those decisions, but they're much needed. And just as Kat mentioned, and I hope my insight gives you some perspective also, I've been through hard times too. I've been through some very hard times actually. And that's how you grow, and that's how we support each other and help one another, because there's other people that may be going through a similar situation as Kat, similar situation as myself, and they listen to this and they say, "Oh, you know what, I need to really think about it. Let me think about how I want to be very strategic in terms of how I want to navigate this situation. How can I move forward? How can I get past this? What can I do?" And I hope that we help you in some way, shape, or form as you're going through your journey. But sometimes you have to make those hard decisions, and that is a big part of developing an executive presence and being able to communicate in those very high stakes, high pressure situations. You have to be decisive as a leader. And thank you for the heart emojis. If you are not decisive, it will make it very, very difficult for you to move forward in your career, especially if you are in a highly visible role and the room is watching you as a woman in leadership, or perhaps you're a man in leadership. You have to be decisive. And decisive means you need to make a decision and you don't need to wait around to think about it forever. Collect as much data as you can. Just as Kat mentioned, she knew she wanted to leave. I specifically knew I wanted to leave, but sometimes you have to wait until things are financially where they need to be for you. And then sometimes financially it may not be where you need to be exactly. And you still got to take that leap and go. So things like that happen from time to time. I know that's a bit different than some having your authority or your basically your confidence being challenged or your authority being hijacked, but it's a great insight for you all to be able to understand that sometimes you're going to have to make some hard decisions. And when you start noticing people doing things, as Kat mentioned, it's very transactional, they're neglecting you, they're not acknowledging you, then you have to just take a mental note and say, you know what, this may be a time for me to move on and do something different. I want to know from you, what are some other challenging situations that you perhaps have dealt with where your authority has been hijacked? I could share with you literally countless ones where I've had to deal with situations like that. However, I will say this, the one thing that actually helped me in those situations, every single time when my authority was challenged or someone was trying to hijack it, the most important aspect of this that helped me was having an executive presence and being very consistent in how I communicated. By far, if you can start developing those two aspects, in addition to what we talked about, your knowledge, communication, being consistent, it will protect you quite a bit. Because every time when those situations happen to me specifically, when I communicated with those individuals or they challenged me publicly, then I would let them know, I would respond the same way I show you all here on the channel in those very high stakes situations. But I already adjust my tone of voice to let them know, by the way, this is exactly what's going on. This is the situation. What questions do you have? And you have to respond in a way to where you still maintain your authority, especially when someone challenges you. And that is why you subscribe to this channel, friend. And if you're a woman in leadership, that is why you work with me directly. Because as you start to elevate and you're in those very highly visible roles, there's only but so much you're going to be able to do until you're at the point where you think, oh my gosh, I don't know how to handle this. Someone just did this in front of me, in front of a meeting, or they challenged me here, or etc. You have to have some type of training to get you where you need to be. And this is the only channel on YouTube where we talk about these high stakes, high pressure situations and how to communicate in those circumstances when they happen in a live setting, not highly edited, not with a bunch of academic theories and leadership models, which there's nothing wrong with that. But when you're in the fire and you need to respond in real time, I'm sorry, you're not going to sit there and think, oh yeah, I remember there was a leadership model I need to, by the time you're thinking about that leadership model, you would have already been hijacked, basically. So these are real-time strategies, things that you want to consider. This is how you start to develop yourself as a leader. Okay, so Kat says, it was one of the hardest days. I thought after high school it would all be a cakewalk. No, yeah, I know. I definitely, as you know now, it's not. But I appreciate you sharing that. It's challenging. A Swin 50, let me know if I'm saying this correctly, says, can I get your Instagram? My Instagram is at Excite Excellence. That's Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and I just started TikTok. So I have that also. Okay, Kat, 23rd, says, question, what communication strategies maintain authority without appearing defensive when you suspect intentional negligence? Okay, let me read this again because that is an excellent question, Kat. So let me read it again for everybody else. Okay, what communication strategies maintain authority without appearing defensive when you suspect intentional negligence? There's a couple things you want to keep in mind in terms of when you suspect negligence. If I would say the first strategy I would say is that you have to, thank you for the heart emojis, you have to really think about what's happening. And we talk about this a lot and think on your feet and etc. There's a decision algorithm that I have, and I'll share it with you. I've talked about it before, but before I go into communication, there's typically some kind of strategy we need to talk about ahead of time. So I always try to prepare ahead of time. So, Kat specifically, the first thing I need to determine is this. I know I say this candidly, but is this a friendly or is this an enemy? I need to figure this out, or is this someone that might be a little in between? So if I'm on the mindset or the suspicion, as you mentioned, that this might be intentional negligence or someone is intentionally giving me a hard time, then I will always respond in a very firm and direct way. There's not a lot of laughing and maybe being overly polite in those situations. You can still communicate it in a way to where you're not being aggressive, but you're still being very direct. So when you have that situation and you are suspecting negligence, you have to kind of determine, is this intentional, is it unintentional, as I've talked about a couple of times. And if it's intentional, you have to be direct. You have to be direct, firm. You have to maintain your facial expressions. You may, depending on the context of it, you either are going to have a straight face in terms of your smile, or you may have a smaller smile. And I work with my clients on developing and knowing which smile they need to show depending on the situation. But that's where I'll start first. So we got to figure out where we're going. Is this good? Is this bad? Is this what's happening here? Now, in terms of strategies, so that you don't appear defensive, you want to ask a question, a clarifying question. Let me explain to you why. If you have a situation coming up, and this is communication specifically, where someone is telling you something and you are suspecting negligence, you're kind of wondering what's going on. If you respond back with the question in a way where your tone of voice is similar to your baseline in terms of how you communicate all the time, then people do not take offense to that. They take it as Kat is just asking me a question. Now, if you change it, let's say, Kat, you normally talk this way, and you say, by the way, can you please explain to me what you're referring to? It sounds like attitude, right? It sounds like you have an attitude. Then people will start to say, oh, she's a little defensive. What's going on with her? Now, if you ask the question, can you please explain what you're referring to so I can make sure I address your question properly? Then people will say, okay, well, Kat's just asking a clarifying question. So your tone of voice is very, very critical when you are in those type of situations. Asking a question always comes across as being more engaged in a conversation versus being that person that is just making a statement. Now, there are times when you need to just make a statement. But if you are suspecting negligence and you ask specifically for communication strategies, I would ask a question, because a question is showing that I am engaged in this dialogue. I am having a conversation instead of me making a public service announcement with you. I'm having a discussion. So asking a question, being mindful of your tone of voice, try to make sure you are asking a question in a way where you are using the same tone of voice that you use normally when you are communicating. If you need to adjust your tone of voice, the tone of voice needs to go up, the tone of voice needs to go down, or it needs to go softer, or it needs to go louder, then those are situations that you'll have to see in real time in terms of what is going on here and what do you feel like is most appropriate. Another way for you not to appear defensive, I would say, is to make sure that your facial expressions show a sense of engagement. So I talked to you about asking a question, managing your tone of voice. Your facial expressions are going to be very important here also. because people are visual and they'll see how you respond. If someone asks you a question that is going to throw you off guard, you I work with my clients on this specifically. We have to basically train you to understand how do you respond when someone says something that may be argumentative. Sometimes I mentioned a lot of times your eyebrows will give it away. Your eyebrows will completely give it away because it's your mind, your mind's way of processing what is happening to me. So just making sure that you are just looking directly at the person, and your lower third of your face needs to either have a smaller smile or it needs to have just a straight face. Those will all help you to not appear as defensive because you are just simply looking like you are engaged. Now, if you are talking to someone and you purse your lips or you make a little face, then they're going to automatically think, well, cat's on defense. Because you are showing the signs that you are on defense. Those are some strategies that I would recommend. I would say to add on a couple things there, and this is so that you're not appearing defensive. Your body language is key. Knowing your triggers, we talk about this a lot, and being able to manage yourself when those triggers come up is important. If someone says, Cat, for example, let's say if someone says, Cat, I don't like the way you did that. And you would say your initial response may be something with your eyebrows because you're thinking like, what are you talking about? But you may start to move your body, or you may start to put your arms on across your arms on your chest, or you may do something else that may appear as if you're being defensive. Sometimes what people will do, Cat, is they'll lean back. And that is almost their way of saying, what you just shared with me is taking me back, and I don't like it. And I have seen a lot of people when they initially will sit up in a chair and they lean back, they are in defense mode majority of time. It is very, 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 very rare, and I've seen it happen maybe once or twice. It is very rare for someone to lean back in their chair and to just say, I'm just relaxing. Sometimes it happens depending on the topic, but if someone is directly giving you something or stating something that you may suspect as being potential negligence, then leaning back is probably a way for your body to say, okay, I don't like what is happening. And that in itself may come across as being very defensive. Now, some of the strategies that we just talked about are things that I work with my clients with directly. Because as I mentioned, a lot of times what will happen is we'll talk about this, but in real time, when those situations are happening, there has to be a way for you to be stress test or pressure test, as I say in my drills I do with my high stakes communication intensive. But there has to be a way for you to build up your stamina. So if someone stresses you or if someone says something to you, I want you to be able to say, okay, it is almost as if a knee-jerk reflex happened. You know exactly what you need to do. I know I need to pivot. Someone just challenged me a question, and you may say, oh, by the way, thank you for the heart emojis. You may say, oh, by the way, I just was given a question and it was completely not appropriate, very rude. How do you respond? It shouldn't be oh, wait, I have to think about how I need to respond. You should have already had a response, especially immediately, because you have to deduct very quickly. Is this a friendly? Is this an enemy? Is this in between? And even if it's a friendly, you respond differently. If it's in between or not friendly, you have to respond the same way, even if the person may be in the middle, because you have to let that person know that if this is suspected negligence, then you have to let them know that even though I'm not being aggressive or not being defensive, but I want you to know that I'm going to be very direct with you based on what you mentioned. I hope that gives you some insight. I know I shared a lot as it relates to communication strategies, but this is what I do. This is why I approach communication like surgery, like I do surgeries, because there is this level of communication that we all have to master when you're truly trying to master it. And this channel is for individuals that are trying to strive to be those exceptional communicators. This is not the channel where people want to just stay and just become average. No, this channel is for the amazing people on the channel like Kat 23rd and some of the other individuals that join me consistently on my lives, because I know you're trying to elevate, and I know if I can help you to elevate how you communicate, then some of the roles or responsibilities that you're going to do in the future will be very big, and they're going to be very high stakes, very high pressured, very highly visible. And I want you to be prepared for that. And if you're a woman in leadership and you know you're about to reach that level or you're getting to it, that's why you reach out to me for support on exciteexcellence.org with a high stakes communication intensive, or start off with an executive strategy session to come up with a plan. But nonetheless, I know you all are going to do amazing things. And I just want to make sure that with you doing amazing things, you're ready for some of the challenges that come up as it relates to communication to help you start to prepare for that. Because this is the reason why so many leaders, and thank you for the heart emojis and the smiley faces, friends. This is the reason why so many leaders struggle. I've mentioned this many times on my channel. Majority of leaders, they know how to communicate. They know how to communicate. They know how to talk. They know how to be articulate and all of those wonderful things. But what happens when you go under pressure? That is exactly the reason why people tend to fumble. They tend to struggle. They don't know what to say, how to say it, when to say it. Their teams don't feel confidence in them, or maybe they feel like their team is not advocating for them. These are skills that you can absolutely learn how to do by, of course, subscribing to the channel. You learn a lot, but of course, working with me, you get more of a customized support that will actually help you with the specific challenges that you are having, because some of the challenges that you may be having may be a bit different than everybody else, or maybe a bit different than the general information I give you here on the channel. Sometimes there's just things about us as individuals where we just need someone to just say, what am I doing? What am I doing incorrectly? Am I doing this wrong? Why are people not listening to me? Why am I freezing? Why am I looking away? Why? You just need to have someone that's been there that can pick it up pretty quickly and say, by the way, I know that you do this. This is how we can fix it. So the next time when you're in those high pressure situations, you know exactly, I know that I tend to look away, or I know I tend to freeze. I know I do this, but now that I know I do this, I am going to do better. And that's what executive coaching is really all about, to increase your awareness of the things that you are doing, but putting it in a way to where not only you know it, but you're able to overcome it. When those situations come up, you're already ready for it. Okay, Cat 23rd says, appreciate it with a heart. Absolutely, Cat. I hope that gives you something to think about as it relates to those communication strategies, because I shared with you a lot, and those are some really great ways to not appear defensive. It's all with your face, your tone of voice, asking a question, appearing very engaged, and etc. So I hope this gives you all some insight to consider as you are transitioning throughout your career. If you have some other topics, let me know what you want to learn more about. I have several topics that Kat has that I'm going to be working on. I've been working on the anniversary content yesterday, and so my anniversary promotion for my 6 years of business at Excite Excellence Incorporated is ending tomorrow. The prices that are on the site right now will more than likely not be there on the 24th or very shortly thereafter. As I've grown as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of value I've added to many of my clients, and I wanted to be able to celebrate with you all with at least providing something as a promotion to help you all on your journey. I appreciate you all so much. Okay, Cat23 says, indeed, you shared a lot today. Walking Encyclopedia 100. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Kat. And Kat, you really came up with some really great insights today also, and some great topics for people to really think about, especially as they're making those transitions in their careers and they're dealing with those situations that come up where they're not being acknowledged. They're making those hard decisions. So, Kat, I appreciate you for being here, because you have a wealth of knowledge, and thank you for the heart emojis, friends. You have a wealth of knowledge that you've shared on the channel, and I appreciate it so much. And that's why I'm here to support you. I do take communication very, very seriously, and when I say I'm going to make the largest content library here, I mean that in all sincerity on planet Earth. It is going to happen. I have over 1,000 videos on the channel right now, and as I mentioned at the very beginning, having over 1,000 videos on your YouTube channel is a rarity. There's not a lot of channels that do that in the big wonderful world of YouTube. So if I'm at 1,000 now, I'm just getting started. And so I'm planning on to do a lot more, have a lot more content, especially when I start transitioning back into doing my pre-recorded content. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot. And I do this because of you. I want to help you all. I want to support you. I know that I personally did not did not have anyone to tell me these aspects of communication as I was developing. I learned a lot in Toastmasters in terms of how to speak slowly and etc. But Toastmasters is very good for public speaking, which I've been doing for over 20 years. But it is not, it cannot help you when you are under serious pressure in a real time setting. It is very hard to do that. They're working on it, but it's it's something that I want to share with y'all. There's a certain level of way you communicate that is not going to be as if you're being a public speaker when you are being challenged directly or someone is treating you with negligence, as Kat mentioned earlier today. There's just some things you just have to have someone talk to you about. I didn't really have that. I had to learn and make a lot of mistakes on my own, which is why I'm here to share whatever I've learned to help you all so that you don't make those mistakes and that you sound as if you are the sharpest, most intelligent person in the room when you are subscribed to the channel. So I hope this gives you all some insight. Let me know what topics you want to learn more about. Kat, I have several topics on my list for you, so I'm going to be working through some of those. And I will see you all in the next video.